Distinguished Events National Monthly WebEx. This is Lisa Lodi, National Director for the Northeast and Southeast Divisions. Also joining me on this call today is Jordan Montanino, National Director for the Central and Western Divisions, as well as Catherine Hinzelka, our Program Support Coordinator. Chris Perry, the National Vice President of Distinguished Events, is on a well-deserved vacation. Today's presentation is a WebEx where all staff are muted automatically. If you have a specific question that you would like to ask, please type it in the chat window and select to all panelists. We are allowing the last 10 to 15 minutes of this WebEx for questions and answers. We are recording the WebEx today so that you will be able to go back and review it again or share it with other members of your staff if you see fit. Next slide.
Well, today it is my, sorry, go ahead.
Today it is our honor and privilege to introduce you to our guest speaker, Jay Fiske, the Chairman and CEO and founder of Microsoft, as well as a good friend to MDA. Jay is a nationally recognized benefit auctioneer and consultant. He has experience and expertise in corporate operations and sales. He has developed a national reputation by providing exceptional auctioneering and auction consulting services for organizations across the country and internationally. Jay has helped raise millions of dollars for worldwide organizations. He is regularly called upon to train auction committees in the techniques which increase auction yields while maintaining a fun-filled environment required for a successful auction. His clients routinely earn much more money from their auctions as a result of the added efficiency gained from implementing his tips. He is the auction consulting knowledge base from which the basis for Auction Maestro was created and formed. We are lucky that Jay has agreed to teach us how to fill our ballrooms with the right people, recruit great auction items, secure the best auctioneer, and have exciting revenue enhancers at all of our galas. Jay, the floor is all yours.
Wow. Thank you, Lisa. That was a great introduction. It was almost like I wrote it myself. Oh, that's right. I did write it myself. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to address all the wonderful staff of MDA. I've really enjoyed working with MDA over the years. And what I want to cover today, and I guess one question I have, Lisa, am I advancing these slides myself, or am I just going to say next slide?
All you have to do is say next slide, and Catherine will take it for you.
Fair enough. Okay. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide then, because what I want to make sure that we get a chance to cover today in the time allotted are three things. The first thing we're going to cover is audience development. And basically, I call this, my shorthand for it is filling the room with bidders, not eaters. And the reason I say it that way is that people that are bidding on items will always eat your food, but people that are eating your food will not always bid on your items. So how you go about filling the room with bidders, not eaters, is really important. Otherwise, you could end up with just a wonderful event with terrific food and not make any money. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Next slide. We're also going to talk about how do you get the best items and do it without cold calling. I don't know how many in my audience today absolutely are thrilled about cold calling and love to talk to total strangers and ask for things without any particular recognition of that person, but it's not a very comfortable thing to do. So we're going to talk today about how do you get the best auction items and do it without cold calling, which I think would be of interest to you. And that's, how do we find a good auctioneer as well, because once you get all these wonderful items, you're going to want to be able to make sure they get sold and get sold for the maximum amount of profit. So we'll talk a little bit about how to find a good professional benefit auctioneer, how to select them, how to pay them, and how to manage them for your maximum benefit. And yes, I do mean managing the auctioneer. It's important. And then we'll talk about revenue enhancers. Revenue enhancers are quite a few that I'm going to list. I may not necessarily go through each and every one of them, but I'm going to at least show them to you. And if one jumps out, then we can either through the Q&A or offline talk about how to do a particular revenue enhancer. But I'm going to share about 15 of them with you today, and we can figure out which ones we want to talk about later. These revenue enhancers will include things such as selling items double and triple, selling choice to the high bidder, doing sweeps, and then I've got quite a few others as well. And then we'll leave some time at the end. As Lisa mentioned, we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end for specific Q&A. So with that said, it's time to get started. So let's go ahead and get started. And we'll talk at first about how much is your business worth. Now, what I mean by your business, I'm talking about the night of the event. So go ahead and click Advance. And the first thing that we need you to understand is that if you have a 5-hour event, like a 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. kind of an event, you're open for business for 5 hours. That is it. You know, you're not making money. You might be making money on sponsorships and advertising, that sort of thing, before you open your doors, and you might make some money after the event, you know, with matching funds and that sort of thing. But I'm talking specifically about the 5 hours, the actual 5 hours that guests are in the room. And that's when you're really open for business for your guests. And so I know we're trying to call this a six-figure event, so I used 100,000 as my target number here. And with 5 hours and $100,000 target out of the room that night, that's $20,000 an hour or $334 a minute. So what does that mean? We'll go to the next bullet, and you'll see that every minute is potentially a revenue minute. Now, you can use those revenue minutes any way you'd like. Some people choose to use those revenue minutes for having speeches and awards and table chit-chat and table hopping and dancing and handing out flowers and all that sort of thing, which is okay. Some of that has to be done, but just recognize that for every minute that you're doing that, you're not making any money. You are taking away a revenue minute. So how does that impact you? We'll go to the next bullet and you'll find out. If you spend about half of your time not selling, in other words, if 2.5 hours out of the evening are done with things that are not actually making you money, then you've got to double the dollars per minute to make up for it. That means $668 a minute instead of $334 a minute. So consider this. If you let someone get up at the beginning of your event and give a 5-minute speech to, quote, talk everybody into being generous, end quote, that 5-minute speech just cost you $1,600. And so a lot of times this comes from a board member or a volunteer or, you know, a well-meaning individual that's going to get up in front of the audience and convince everybody that they need to dig deep, you know, be generous, or whatever it is that they're trying to talk them into. And every minute that they consume doing that, people are not spending any money. It's $334 a minute. So it just puts it in perspective. So let's go to the next slide. And to try and give you a sort of a graphic of what this might look like, think of your audience as a sponge. You know, if you had a 1-quart sponge, and this is not a trick question, but if you had a 1-quart sponge and I was to ask you how much water does a 1-quart sponge hold, the answer is 1 quart. And so if you try and pour 8 ounces of water into a 1-quart sponge, what you end up with is a sponge with excess capacity. In other words, you could have poured more water into the sponge, but you didn't have more water. Conversely, if you try and pour a gallon of water into a 1-quart sponge, most of that water ends up on the floor because the sponge can only absorb 1 quart's worth of water. You're pouring a gallon of water into it. So why is that important? Well, as you visualize your audience, if you think of your audience as a sponge, you will much better be able to match your evening and your items to that audience. For every buying unit, and your results will vary. This is one of the reasons why you use Auction Maestro software, and you can track historical data and go back and look at the demographic data that over a number of events or over a number of years. But you will probably find, if you go historically and look at how many dollars per evening you generated in revenue per buying unit, a buying unit being a couple or an individual, in other words, a husband and wife, they're together, or a couple is going to be 1 buying unit, a single person at the event is 1 buying unit. If you go back and look, you'll probably see that somewhere between $500 and $1,000 per buying unit was generated at your event. Now, you may be below $500, in which case there's some specific things you need to do to pull yourself up to $500. If you're above $1,000, that's good, but it's also dangerous. It means that you're over-absorbing the sponge, so to speak. You're trying to get too much out of too few people. If you want to grow your event, you're going to need to add more people. That means the following year you need to find a bigger location, be able to add more buying units, because the typical running average for most events is 500 to 1,000. Again, your results will vary, but go back and look historically and see what you've been doing on dollars per buying unit, and that'll give you a tip as to what you need to do going forward, whether you need to improve the dollars per buying unit ratio or whether you need to add more people for the following year. All right. So the next slide says, well, how do we go about and get a room full of bidders rather than a room full of eaters? Well, we start by charging appropriately. You know, if you offer a $75 value meal and you charge $50 because you're going to make up for it in the auction, then you're upside down. You're filling the room with bidders. You've got people that are, you're filling the room with eaters. You've got people that are there because of the party. They're there because it's a bargain and they want to go have fun, they want to drink and party and all that sort of thing, but they're not necessarily going to connect that it's a fundraiser. You need to charge enough for your entry so that people understand they're attending a fundraiser. And that means if you're offering, I always kind of jokingly but with a little bit of seriousness, that if you're offering a wonderful $50 meal, you should only charge $75 for it. In other words, you want to always charge more than what the guests are perceived they're getting so that they understand they're going to a fundraiser. And that allows them to opt out or opt in. It's a self-selection process. You want people to opt in that are there to support MDA. You want people to opt out if they're only there for the deal or the meal. All right, so let's go to the next one. And that's, well, let's sell a table. Selling a table is not the same as building a proper audience. You might be very, very good at selling the table, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee you that the people that are sitting at the table are going to be bidders, not eaters. In fact, a lot of times I'll notice that organizations will be doing a terrific job of selling a table for $5,000 or a table for $2,500 or a table for $10,000. They sell those corporate tables, those sponsorship tables. Great job of that. And it's really good on the sponsorship side, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the people that will be sitting at the table are going to spend any money once we get to the event. In other words, to put it bluntly, you might have a table filled with rented tuxedos and borrowed evening gowns, and that means that the people that are sitting at the table, even though the table may have cost the company, the sponsor, $10,000, the table may be filled with people that were just invited to go be seat fillers because the company that bought the table didn't want to have an empty table there. So the people that are attending are not necessarily people that have any money or necessarily have the money to spend on your cause or for the items that you're putting up for bid. So who is invited is just as critical as selling the table. So how do you take care of that? Well, one of the things you can do is you can use a table captain approach. In other words, once the table is purchased, or even the tables that are not purchased, get the owner of the table together, or the person who would potentially fill a table together, and set the expectation. Let them know that you want to have at least half of your audience filled with people that will be bidders. And I'm going to pause here momentarily and just say something, and this is not on the slide, it's not a bullet point, but it's something to think about. And that is that we typically do not make money from our high bidder. And that is something that is often missed. People think we make money from our high bidder. We don't. We only collect money from our high bidder. We actually make the money. The real money is made from the second, third, fourth, and fifth place bidders. In other words, the people that don't win, because they're the ones that make sure the high bidder pays appropriately. In other words, the person that's going to win an item at $1,000 is probably the same person that will win it at $1,500 or win it at $2,000. The only reason why that person pays $2,000 for that item instead of $1,000 for that item is because there were second, third, and fourth place bidders that drove the price up. So what does that mean? What that means is that you need people in the audience that are willing to play the game. They may not necessarily be the high rollers that will win, but they're people that are willing to get their card up in the air and increment the bid. Because every time the bid goes up, the bidder that wins it is going to pay a little bit more. It's more about having players than it is about having buyers. And that's a real important point to try and remember. You're looking for players. You're not necessarily looking for buyers. A room full of buyers will not necessarily play, but a room full of players will make sure the buyers always pay, and that's important. Okay, next one. So offer to fill the tables for the corporate sponsors. This is one that's often missed. You might sell that table for $5,000 or sell that table for $10,000, but it's wholly appropriate to go back to the person who committed to buy that table and say to them, thank you so much for buying the table and being one of our corporate sponsors. In addition to making money on the sponsorships of tables, which you very generously just agreed to do, we also are going to be having an auction the night of the event, and we would love it if you could help us fill your table with people that will be players and will sit at your table and represent your company in a positive way by actively bidding on the items. That is often never told to the people that buy the table. It's assumed that the people that buy the table know that. Most of them don't know that. Most of them think that if they write the check for $5,000 or for $10,000, they've done their job. They don't get the connection that you also are planning on getting more money from that table that night by the bidders. So it's totally appropriate in the process of thanking them for buying the table to also say, now you do realize we're having an auction, and we would love it if your company would send people to the auction who will be active participants in our auction. If they are unable to do that, then what you can do is offer to fill the table for them. You will have other people that will be attending the event that are coming as singles, couples, or groups of 4 or 6 people, and they need to be seated somewhere. So what you could offer the corporate sponsors, you could say, you know, if it's going to be difficult for you to fill your table with bidders, we'd be more than happy to fill them for you, fill your table for you with people that we know will bid on behalf of your company and will make your company's sponsorship look good because they'll be active participants at your table. A lot of companies that spend a lot of money for sponsorships appreciate that help because they don't want to have their table being a dud. They don't want the people to think, well, gee, look at this company. They bought a table right up front and nobody's even participating in the auction. So it's totally okay to offer to fill the tables for those corporate sponsors. The bonus in it for you is you get to sell the table a second time. You sell it once to the sponsor, but then if you're selling it by the couple, you can put those couples at that table, and you've actually been able to increase your revenue because you've sold the same table more than once. Okay, next one. Think about personally inviting and rewarding your top 10 bidders every year. Now, the nice thing about Auction Maestro is it will do for you a descending dollar report by bidders. So when your event is over on 2015 and you're planning for 2016, you can do a descending dollar report. Who is our biggest spender? Who is our second biggest? Who is our third biggest? That sort of thing. You can do it by individual bidder. You can also do it by table. So you can see what was our biggest table, what was our best supporting table, what was our second best supporting table, our third best supporting table. Well, those people that were in the top 10 should receive a personal invitation, not one of your generic invites that you send out, but a phone call from a board member, a phone call from a staff member, somebody that says, you know what, you were tremendously supportive last year. We sure appreciate it. Can we count on you again this year? That personal invitation will bring them back. Now, there's another thing you can do. And this is not, I don't have a bullet for this, but it's kind of a fun thing to do, is you can go to your top 10 list, and you can, especially your top 2 or 3, and say to them, you know, you were tremendously supportive last year. We're greatly appreciative of what you've done for MDA. This year, what we'd like to do, if you will commit to a table for this year, what we will do is we will send a limousine to pick up you and all of your table guests from their individual homes. We'll bring you to the event. When the event is over, we'll help you gather up all of your auction purchases, and then the limousine will deliver you and your guests back to their homes afterwards. That is a nice touch, and it's worth it because the person who was a top bidder or one of the top 2 or 3 bidders last year will certainly buy a table this year if they think it's a chance for them to brag. It's a lot of it has to do with showing off to the friends and bragging. Hey, I'm going to the MDA event this year. You know what? And I decided to do a whole table this year. I only went there as a couple last year, but I've got a table this year, and I've got a limo set aside. Why don't you join me? I'll pick you up, and we'll all go have a big party on the way in the limousine. It's very effective. And by the way, the limo services will donate the limo for that, because you can say to them that that the demographic of the people that they'll be picking up are the people that were the big spenders at the event, and therefore they can hand out business cards and perhaps get some limousine business out of the deal. Alternately, what you can offer is a hotel room where the event is. If the event is going to be at a hotel room, you can work a deal out with a hotel to provide either a complimentary room if possible. If not, go ahead and pay for the room, but give it to the couple that were the top 2 or 3 or 4 couples at the event the year before. And again, just tell them to come, make a night of it. Don't just plan on going home at 11 o'clock at night, but instead why don't they stay over at the Westin or stay over at the Fairmont or whatever the event might be. Okay, go to the next bullet. You can use a tiered pricing strategy. Tiered pricing is very simple. It basically means that if you're selling an entry for $100 as a base level, you can also have a patron level that might be $250. You can have a benefactor level that's $500. You can have a super patron at $1,000. You can have a super benefactor at $1,500. In other words, you can have multiple levels of entry. Now, why do you do that? It sets the example for the people that are looking at the invitation. It may be that they'll still come in at $100, but they're going to look at that invitation. They're going to say, oh, there's patrons at $250. There's benefactors at $500. There's super patrons at $1,000, and so forth. So they'll get the idea that they're going to a fundraiser. It helps send the message that it's a fundraiser, it's not a dinner. You're not inviting people to a dinner or a party, you're inviting people to a fundraiser, and it helps set the right expectation. Some people are just as comfortable writing a check for $500 as writing a check for $200. So instead of locking them into $100 a person, give them the option to write the check for $500 for 2 people. You know, it's only a little bit more ink on the invitation, but it does work to your advantage in terms of setting expectations. Okay, next one. You can have a table captain party. The way this works is anyone that buys a table is invited to the party. Thank you for buying the table. Come to our wine and cheese party. We're doing a pre-party before the event so that we can thank all the people that are hosting tables. And yes, this would be the corporate hosts as well as the individual people that buy tables. Invite them to a little wine and cheese party somewhere, and it just sort of set the expectation. Let them know that there's going to be a competition among the tables, and that the table that has the highest auction yield at the event is going to have some sort of a special surprise party, some special gift. Maybe it's a dinner for just those 8 or 10 people. They'll be able to be invited back for a special dinner at a restaurant or at the hotel or something like that. But you come up with a prize and let everybody know, you know, you're the table captain. If your table is the highest yield that night, then we're going to, you know, reward you with a special. Or what you could do instead is you could do it like a raffle or door prize. You could say that every table that spends above a certain dollar amount is entered into a door prize raffle. You could do it that way. But come up with a way to incent the table captains so that they invite the right people. You want them to bring 3 or 4 other couples that are going to spend money, not 3 or 4 other couples that are going to just eat the food. And then finally, the last bullet on here has to do with honorees. If you have an honoree, the likelihood is the honoree will help you fill the room with bidders, not eaters as well, because the honoree knows that the success of the event reflects directly on them as the honoree. An honoree that can't reach out and you know, and tap into their network and pull in numerous table captains to buy tables is probably not an appropriate honoree. I know it seems awfully harsh and cold, but the fact of the matter is if you're the honoree, you pretty much know that your job as the honoree is to help make the event a success. So the honoree will help you do that. All right, let's go to the next slide then. So the next slide talks a little bit about what happens when you fill the room with bidders, not eaters. This is kind of what's going to happen. You'll notice at the very top of the pyramid, the blue pyramid and the black pyramid, there's not a lot of space up there. At the bottom of the pyramid, the base of the pyramid, is very broad. The top of the pyramid represents the few individual people in the room that can buy just about anything that you offer up for bid. That's good news. The bad news is there aren't very many of them, and the further bad news is the people at the very top of the pyramid probably already own everything that they would want anyway. They don't need round-trip airfare on Alaska Airlines, as an example, because they have a private jet. They don't need a one-week stay at Puerto Vallarta in a villa because they probably already own their own villa somewhere. So at the top of the pyramid, when you get very wealthy people to come to your event, it's good. There aren't very many of them, and they probably don't spend very much money. They might be perfect people to tap into for matching gifts or for other things, but probably not going to buy your auction items. At the bottom of the pyramid, you have a lot of people, but those are the seat fillers. Those are the eaters, not bidders down there. So what you are really trying to do is you're trying to get your buying power to be somewhere in the middle of that pyramid. When you get the buying power somewhere in the middle, down from the top but up from the bottom, you're going to find that you'll have a good synergistic mix of people and auction items. And that's why you may have seen this before, maybe not, but when we lay out our live auction, we do it so that it looks like a bell curve. We start with the low dollar value items at the beginning, we roll the values up, we roll the values back down. We're doing that so that the bulk of the money we make is in the middle of the auction, not at the end. We never, ever, ever save the best for last, because when you save the most expensive item for last, you need at least 2 bidders to bid on it, and that means one person that had the money to buy an expensive item goes home with nothing for their effort because there's nothing left for them to spend their money on. So we want to make sure that when you lay out your live auction items, you do it in such a way that it's a bell curve, and the middle of your live, when all the energy is there and all the people are focused, that's when you sell your big items of the evening. So ramp the values up and down. Use table captains, of course, to fill the room with bidders, not eaters. And avoid having similar items. I've seen many auctions that have just not done well at all because they thought, well, 1 trip to the Caribbean was good, 3 trips to the Caribbean was even better, and 5 trips to the Caribbean would be outstanding. The trouble is that once one bidder buys a trip to the Caribbean, they're not very likely to buy another trip to the Caribbean. So you've just lost one bidder. So you want to avoid having items that are going to conflict with each other. It's much better to have variety across the board. This will help your buying power, because when one person buys an item in one category, there's something in another category that that same person might still be interested in or other people would be interested in. So mixing up your categories is always better than having one auction. The only exception to that rule would be something like a wine auction, where you're doing, every lot is a lot of wine, because really every lot of wine is different, and people are filling up their wine cellars. That's even though they're all in the same category of wine, they're different because of variety. It's not the same with a trip to Mexico, a trip to Canada, a trip to Europe, and a trip to Southeast Asia. Those will all conflict with each other because people typically won't take 2 or 3 or 4 trips a year. Okay. Next slide. Moving right along. So how do you get those auction items? What's the best way? Well, the process for getting those is through what we call cold calling and networking. Now, I'm not a big fan of cold calling. I don't think cold calling works very well. I mean, it can be done. Some people like it. That's great if you do. But the problem with cold calling is that it's a process of trying to convince someone that you've never met before to give something of value to them, to someone they don't know for a cause they know absolutely nothing about. And that pretty much is a setup to hear no. And most people don't like to hear no. They hear no 2 or 3 times, they give up. And so we want to instead use a process that's going to get yeses. We're looking for yeses, not no. And so networking is a better way, because what networking does is it means you just have to convince friends and family and coworkers and neighbors to do something for someone that they already have a relationship with, and that works typically a lot better than cold calling. So networking is going to pretty much always be more successful and will get you the better items. Next. So to describe that process properly, I call it peeling the onion from the inside. If you visualize an onion, those of you that have ever cooked before, slice an onion in half. And when you slice an onion in half, you have all those little rings. Now, the only part of that onion that is a little squiggly is right in the middle. Everything else is a concentric circle going out from the inside. And the first thing you tend to do when you cook with an onion is you do what? You peel the onion. You take the onion skin that's on the outside and you throw it away. Why do you throw it away? Because it has no flavor. It has no value. That's the outside of the onion. And procuring items is sort of the same way. If you think cold calling and think in terms of cold calling, that's the onion skin. Those are the connections that you don't have. Those are the people that you've never met before. They're of very little value. They're on the way outside of the onion and a very little flavor out there, to put it the metaphor in cook's terms. The sharpest, strongest part of the onion is right in the middle. In other words, in terms of getting auction items, it's you. You're at the center of that onion. If you were to ask yourself to donate something, the likelihood is you would probably say yes, because why? You already know what the question is. You asked yourself. And so you're going to hear yes from yourself. You're going to hear yes from spouses and significant others. You're going to hear yes from family members. You're going to hear yes from friends and coworkers. You're going to hear yes from neighbors. And you're going to hear yes from places where you normally shop. And that's because you already have a relationship. Because you have a relationship with these people, they're more receptive to you, and they're very receptive to things that are important to you. So don't be afraid to start with yourself and work from the onion out. That's going to be absolutely the best way for you to get the best items. The other reason why it's really beneficial to work from yourself out is that you already know what these folks can donate. In other words, you know what the interests are of your spouse. You know what the interests are of your best friend. You know what the interests are of your coworkers. You know the coworker who has the boat that they go water skiing on all the time, or the coworker who has an airplane that goes flying on Wednesday afternoon. You know about the family member that has the condo at the resort. You know about the place where you shop, you know, that has tickets to the local professional sports team because they offer them up to their clients. So since you already know what the person's capable of donating, you don't have to ask two questions. You don't have to say, would you help me by donating something, and then ask a second question of what do you think you can donate? Because the problem is you've just taken the creativity monkey and you've put that on the back of your potential donor. You don't want to ask the donor to come up with something to donate. You want to tell the donor what you'd like them to donate. And because you already have a relationship with them, you know what they're capable of donating. And so you're very direct. You know, Harry, would you do us a favor and get us a round of golf for 4 at your private country club? Aunt Martha, I know you're in the quilting club. Would you be willing to help us by asking your quilting club to put together a quilt for us for our auction, you know? Brother Bill, you know, I know that you love salmon fishing and you're out on your salmon fishing boat all the time. Would you be willing to take someone fishing sometime as part of an auction item? So because you already know the relationship and what interests them and what they can donate, it's a much faster and more direct path to yes. Okay? All right. So what are the best items? The best items are things that fall into the following categories. Unique experiences. People love to have unique experiences. They want sideline passes for a football game, or they want to be able to play golf with a celebrity, or sing on stage with a rock band, or something like that. Very unique experiences. Next item, unusual or limited edition items, things that they can say to their friends, oh, look what I got. My goodness, where'd you get that? I got it at an auction. Wow, I wish I had something like that. Next one, memorabilia. Certain memorabilia sells really, really well. It kind of depends on, you know, if it's generic memorabilia, maybe not. But something that's really unique, could an autographed guitar, something really special will sell really well. Items with emotional impact. Items with emotional impact are things that people just can't say no to. Example, a red wagon filled with toys for girls or boys. You know, grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle, mom and dad can just never say no to a wagon full of toys. It has emotional impact. It could be a large overstuffed teddy bear or panda bear, something like that, has emotional impact. So think of things where people sort of do the ooh and ah during the auction when it comes out. Okay, Items that keep on giving, gifts that keep on giving. What this means is somebody buys it at the auction, and then they're able to use it forever. It might be something like having your name used as a character in a novel written by a famous novelist, or perhaps it's a membership in an exclusive club or something like that. But they buy it the night of the event, and they kind of have it forever. Practical items, like an espresso machine, something like that would be very handy. I would stay away from things like microwaves. People typically don't need more than one microwave, but they certainly can use an extra espresso machine. They'll certainly use, an entertainment center or something like that, a flat screen TV. People will always need an extra flat screen TV for a den, but practical items will always sell well. Trendy items sell well. Trendy items would be things that are really, really popular today. They may not be popular tomorrow, but they're very popular today. Over the years, we've sold things like Beanie Babies and Tickle Me Elmos and Kirsten dolls and that sort of thing, that when they were very trendy and very hot. So think about what the hot trendy thing is today. Right now, it probably would be an Apple iWatch. If you get an iWatch, it's hot, it's trendy. A couple of years ago, it was an iPad. Once upon a time, it was an iPhone. So think of what the trendy things are. Those will always go well, and yes, there'll be competition for it in your auction. Local trips, cabins, and mini vacations. One of the things that the demographic of the people that are attending your event will not have a lot of is free time, because they're successful people. They're busy building businesses. They're busy, working for a living. So a little 3-day getaway, 2-3-day getaway to a local cabin, a mini vacation, a local trip, something like that, those are going to be very popular because it allows these folks in your audience to get away for a couple days and feel good about it. International trips are selling well. Be careful about which part of the world. Of course, I'm sure you know what parts of the world you don't want to be sending people to these days. But South America is very popular. Southeast Asia is very, very popular these days. Caribbean's always popular. Parts of Europe are always popular. And then finally, here's the one that is often overlooked. This one is often missed. Items you would buy. If you get your committee together, if you got 10 people or 12 people on your committee, you are sort of representing the audience. And you're sort of what we call a focus group. So if the 10 or 12 people on your committee got together and for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes worked silently and made a list of the 3, 4, 5 things that each of you individually might want to buy at an auction, and then after the 5 or 10 minutes has expired, have somebody gather up all of the ideas and look at them, you're going to find that 2 or 3 or 4 of the committee will have come up with some of the same items. Well, if 2 or 3 or 4 of a 10-person committee come up with the same items, in a 100-person audience, that's 20 or 30 people in a 100-person audience. In a 400-person audience, that could be 100 people that are interested in the same item. That makes that item very, very popular. So don't forget to make the list of things that you and your committee would like to have, and the more popular it is among your committee members, it will also be popular among your audience. All right, so let's talk about using a professional auctioneer. Having someone who can talk fast and sound like they're selling a herd of cows is not the answer. You want someone who's looking to maximize your bids and be entertaining while doing so. That basically means the ability to connect with the audience, tell jokes, make the audience understand that they're the star, not the auctioneer. You do not want an auctioneer that's a look-at-me kind of auctioneer, where it's all about them on stage with spotlight and all that sort of thing. What you want is someone who understands that the real entertainment is in the audience. The audience doesn't realize it, but they're attending a play, and they're the players. They're the actors in the play. The auctioneer's job is to be the facilitator so that the people in the audience hit all of their lines and hit all of their marks on stage, because the stage really is in the audience. You also perhaps maybe, I don't like to use the term stuck, but it may be the only choice you have is a commercial auctioneer. And so understand that commercial auctioneers, what they do is liquidate things. Their job, the reason they're hired and the reason they're good as commercial auctioneers, and the reason they make a lot of money as commercial auctioneers, is because they're really, really good at getting rid of a whole bunch of things really, really quick. But you're having a benefit auction. You're not having a liquidation sale. So just having someone who can talk quickly and liquidate things is not going to work to your advantage. What you want is somebody who can focus on your cause, remind the audience as often as possible why they're there, make sure the audience understands it's not about a deal or a steal or a bargain. It's about, being generous and being rewarded with a lovely parting gift in exchange for their generosity. In other words, the focus needs to be on the cause. The focus needs to be on the audience. The focus is not on getting rid of things. And so now, that said, you may have wonderful commercial auctioneers in your area that are also wonderful benefit auctioneers, and they could be the very same person, and that's totally fine if you've got someone who can throw that switch. Not all commercial auctioneers can throw that switch, but some can. So let's go talk about that. Let's talk about how they can do that. Well, we start by asking that person if they have ever worked a charity or benefit event before, and if so, how often, and would they be willing to meet with you during the planning stage? And the true professional auctioneer is going to say, yep, I always arrive at least an hour before your doors open. I want to have time to sit down and go through the agenda with you. I want to look at the catalog. I want to ask questions. I want to do a sound check. I want to make sure that there's, if we have doubles, if we're selling choice of anything, if we're selling, sweeps, anything that's going to be special. Do I introduce any guests? Do we have an honoree? In other words, it's a whole long list of things that auctioneer should be asking you. If they say, yeah, I've got a commercial auction that's finishing up at 6, and I know your dinner's at 6 o'clock, I'll be there by 7, hand me the catalog and I'll go sell them, that's the wrong person. You're looking for someone who will do the pre-work planning with you, work with the committee several times ahead of time, be there early, go through the agenda. In other words, you're looking for a partner on your committee. You're not just looking for someone who's going to show up and call numbers. In other words, they're going to understand the specials. They're going to understand the stuff that is specific to charity auctions. You guys do a lot of things in charity auctions that the commercial world doesn't do. So they need to know what doubles, sweeps, upgrades, surprise items, those sort of things. That your fund admission, all of that is really important that they know all that. Okay. So that said, how do you find a good one? Well, we'll start by referral. That's always the best way. You're with MDA, but there's no reason why you can't make a call to the people at the Heart Gala or the Cancer Gala or the people at the Boys and Girls Club or whatever. I mean, you're all, you don't really compete with each other. You compete with your own constituencies. You're not really competing against each other unless you're on exactly the same night. So there's no reason why you can't swap some information. You also have AFP. You'll have your other local nonprofit groups. So network around. Also, the National Auctioneers Association is a great source for it. The National Auctioneers Association has a website. They also have a published list of benefit auctioneers. They break it out by category, and you could find a couple, give them a call. And then also prior events. Think of who in your area has had prior events. Were they successful? Was there something in the newspaper about an event that was particularly successful? Call the people that had that event and say, we heard you guys did really well and you had a record event. Who'd you use as an auctioneer, and get the referral from them. Then once you find one and you think that you're ready to lock that person down, definitely check references. Ask for references. Ask, did the person arrive on time? Were they entertaining? Were they were they professional, or did they say anything off color? Was there anything about them, about how they conducted their business that might be off-putting to your audience? Real important. Ask to view a video. Most auctioneers these days have videos on YouTube, so go take a look at one. Go watch an event in person. There's no reason why you couldn't go stand in the back of the room and watch one of these auctioneers as they pursue their craft. And then finally, ask the auctioneer about special cases. A great question I get asked all the time is, hey, can you tell me about an event that you did where you had a particularly tough challenge? I could do a whole hour workshop right now on just the tough challenges I've had over 25 years. But ask them, tell us about a unique item you sold, or tell me about how you solved a difficult situation with somebody in the audience or something like that. I had that happen to me literally last week. I had a very special case kind of a thing. And so, the auctioneers, oh yeah, I one time had a person who was totally drunk and came up on stage and grabbed the microphone out of my hand, and so, but find out how they're going to handle not just the routine things, but find out how they handle the things that you weren't expecting to have handled. Okay, so let's go now to revenue boosters. There's all kinds of revenue enhancing boosters in here. And so just to kind of run through a couple of them, balloon sale, run for the roses, candy hearts. These are when you get an excess of gift certificates. You've got the gift certificates for the car washes, the haircut and blow dry, you know, the dry cleaning, you know, the taekwondo lessons, all that kind of stuff. You don't really want to put those out on the silent auction. So what you can do is you can categorize them into values, $25 certificates, $50 certificates, $100 certificates. And you can stick those inside of balloons and let people pop a balloon, and lo and behold, they pay $25 for a balloon and they got $50 worth of car washes. Or you can wrap a little piece of paper that says $50 worth of dry cleaning, and wrap that around a rose, and have volunteers walking around with trays, silver trays of roses, and just say to the guys, you know, would you like to buy a rose for your lady? They're $25 a piece, and attached to it is a certificate worth something between $25 and $50. In other words, they always get something worth at least what they paid. They might get something worth as much as twice what they paid, but it's a great way to get rid of those items. Candy hearts, the same thing. You put the gift certificate right up in a little envelope, stick it on the bottom of a Whitman sampler candy heart kind of a thing, sell the candy hearts, and they flip the box over. There's an envelope. They pull out of the envelope, tells them what they want. Doesn't take up any table space. Buy it now boards. Buy it now boards are very similar kind of a thing. I actually have pictures I could show of this. If you're interested, I could email them off to Lisa. She can redistribute them. But basically, you take a replica of all the certificates, you stick them on a large board. It takes them off of the silent auction table, saves you space, and you categorize the certificates in $25, $50, $100 boards, and somebody pays $100, they can pick any certificate they want off the board. The certificate might be worth $100 to $250. The $50 board has certificates worth $50 to $100 boards. The earlier they get to the event, the earlier they choose the certificate, the better choice they get. The bidding frenzy, probably don't have time for that right now to go into too much detail. Let's go to the next one, the sweep. The sweep go to the next bullet. Here we go. The sweep is where we have multiples of the same thing. For example, if you have a major league ball team in your area where it might have a VIP box, you know, maybe it's a box with 20 people can sit in a VIP to watch a football game or a baseball game, and they've donated it to you. If you try and sell that to one person, that's one person willing to spend thousands of dollars to entertain 19 people in this private box. But instead, what you can do is do it as a sweep. You can say that the San Francisco Giants, as an example, are going to have a baseball game against the Dodgers on September 13th. We've got the VIP box. It has room for 20. I'm looking for 20 cards up in the air. Put as many cards up in the air as you'd like. I'm going to start at $100 a person and go up. When it's too pricey, go ahead and pull your card down. When I see that there's 20 cards still in the air, I'm going to read off those 20 numbers, and you each get to go to the ball game. Or you do it by the couple. You can do, I'm looking for 10 couples to go to the ball game. So it's a lot easier to sell 10 people at $250 each to attend a ball game, $250 a couple, than to try and get one person to pay $2,500. So that's the sweep. Choices and doubles, this one's pretty obvious. It basically means if you've got, I'll use the ball game analogy again, you've got Friday night's game or Saturday night's game, you've got tickets to Friday night's game, tickets to Saturday night's game. We put that in as choice. We let the high bidder choose Friday night or choose Saturday night. Now the good news is we also say that the high bidder can take both at 2 times the bid. So people that want both Friday and Saturday night's game are bidding against people that want Friday night's game, and they're bidding against people that want Saturday night's game. So you have 3 different groups of bidders all bidding against each other. And then when it finally gets to sold, the auctioneer says, would you like to take both games at 2 times your bid? No, I just want Saturday night. Okay, Saturday night sold. First card I see in the air gets Friday night at the same price, and then you sell Friday night. So it boosts the value of the items because of the competition. Doubles, you're probably familiar with. It's when a donor says, if this goes really well, you can double it up, sell it a second time. Dinner upgrade I'll cover real quick, then we're going to just go to Q&A. We'll run through the rest real quick. The dinner upgrade is something I came up with several months ago. I've been playing with it. It's a lot of fun. And basically this is if you're having the typical banquet chicken dinner, you ask the catering staff if they can produce 1 table's worth of ribeye steaks or something really, really special, and but only one table's worth. So at the beginning of the dinner service, the auctioneer says, ladies and gentlemen, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is the catering staff, because we're sold out tonight, has run out of chicken dinners, and we're one table short of chicken dinners. And that's the bad news. The good news is they have been able to find some ribeye steaks, and they're wondering if we could find one table willing to take the ribeye steaks instead of the chicken dinner. Well, of course, everybody in the room wants the ribeye steaks, and that's an opportunity for the auctioneer to sell off the dinner upgrade. I've sold that many times in the last 3 or 4 months for $500 to $1,000 extra at a table, just to because someone at the table wanted to be a hero and be a buddy to the friends they invited and upgrade everybody from the chicken dinner to the dinner to the ribeye steak. We did it at one event also in March. Kind of this is where we got it started. They were doing a surf and turf thing, which is salmon and chicken, and we flew in Maine lobster and had a Maine lobster dinner for one table, and it sold for a couple $1,000. So that's the dinner upgrade. So go ahead and just click through the rest real quick. I'll kind of show you surprise items. These are all, just go and keep clicking. These are all extra fundraising things that we can do to revenue boosters. You wouldn't want to do them all, and that you stop there. You wouldn't want to do them all at every event, but these are things you can choose from. And I'm assuming Lisa will make these slides available to all of you. If there's any specific one of these that you would like to know more about, I'm more than happy to do that one-on-one, send you an email on how to set it up and make it work. But all of these are revenue enhancers. With that, I'm going to turn it back over for questions. We'll go to the next one. And I realize I talked very quickly. And a little bit, it's sort of like taking a drink of water from a fire hydrant. I apologize. But hopefully some of that stuck.
Thank you, Jay. Yes, I think it has. Catherine just texted me and said that we've gotten quite a few responses saying how great this is. So even though it is a lot of information, it's all really great information. This WebEx will be posted on the Distinguished Events Resource Center, so everybody will be able to watch it again and share it with their staff. We do have just a few questions that have come up, Jay. One of them is, how do you tell a table captain that you want them to bring guests who will be active bidders?
Well, yeah, and the operative word is tell. You don't tell them, you ask them. And I've done this many times, I've hosted table captain parties with clients, and I say to them, you know, we very much appreciate the fact that you have bought a table or that you're willing to help fill a table, and we just want to give you an overview of what's going to happen the night of the event. You know, we're going to have the cocktail party, we're going to have the silent auction, we're going to have, you know, the wine, and then we're going to have a live auction. And during the live auction, we're going to have some wonderful items, some of them one-of-a-kind items, very unique items, and we really are looking for people that will be very active in the bidding process, because we know that the more active the bidding process, the more money we'll make from those items. And so we're hopeful that as a table captain, you will assist us and bring folks from your connections, whether they be, you know, family connections or friends or from your company, that are going to be active participants. It'll be there, you know, play the game and get their bid cards up in the area. It's more fun when more people sort of play the game. So we're sort of setting the expectation for them, not necessarily telling them, but letting them know what to expect. Because otherwise, they may not know that. They think that they bought the table and they're just going to go have a dinner. They may not even realize that there's a live auction. They may think there's a silent auction, but they may not realize there's going to be a live auction. So it's just giving them, just being informative and letting them understand what the expectation is that night and how they might be able to help us.
Great. Another question is, how do you tell an important sponsor they can't speak at your event if they've always done so in the past?
Well, I don't know it's telling them they can't speak. I think it's a matter of letting them know what your budget is for that night. You know, tonight our goal is to raise $100,000, and we've got 5 hours to do it in. And that means that every minute is $336 worth of value for us, because every minute's a revenue minute. Now, we're more than happy, because you're a terrific sponsor, to allocate 3 minutes if you'd like. We're willing to, you know, give you, you know, the $1,000 worth of time to thank everybody for the support of the, you know, for their support on behalf of your company of the MDA. But please understand that if it goes beyond 3 minutes, it's costing us $336 a minute. And, we have no way to make that up. So I think you just sort of set that expectation. Now, if you have somebody that's not a sponsor, you can be a little more blunt. I wouldn't be blunt with a sponsor. I would sort of be, as appropriate as you can be with a sponsor, because after all, they're a sponsor. But I think if you've got someone who's not a sponsor, let's say it's a member of the board or just a well-meaning volunteer, then I think what you say to them is, look, we're going to let you do the welcome, but we're giving you 3 minutes. And we're going to put someone at the front table with flashcards. And the flashcards are going to say 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and done. And when we get to 1 minute, they're going to hold up that flashcard to let you know you've got 1 minute. When you get to 30 seconds, you're going to have 30 seconds. When we say done, we are literally going to have the sound crew turn off the microphone. So it will be really beneficial for you if you finish before the flashcard that says done comes up. You can be a little, it's kind of have some fun with it, be blunt with it. But otherwise, someone will just drift. They'll talk for 10 minutes, and they'll think that they're doing you a favor by talking everybody into being generous.
How true. One last question I see is, what do you do if a person who was the high bidder during the live auction says that they don't want the item when the volunteer goes to them to complete the paperwork?
I'm assuming you're sending paperwork out immediately after the sale as part of you fill out the form and you take it out for them to sign off on it. This is not after the event. This is during the live auction, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Does that happen very often, by the way? Has that been a particular problem at one location? The reason I ask is that if it is, what we've done in the past when there's been sort of repeaters, where it's just sort of the nature of the event, is we've had a spotter watching second high bidders to see who the second high bidders. Most live auctions come down to 2 people. You have you'll have 3, 4, 5 people bidding, but then when it comes down to right at the end, 2,500, how about 2,750? Make it 3,000. When you go to 3,250, how about 3,250? It's all for MDA. Well, when you get down to that point where you're at the last step, there's usually 2 bidders at that point before the last step. So having a spotter watching the second high bidder and making a note of who the last 2 bid numbers are will allow you to have a backup, so that when you go to that bidder who turns it down, you can then discreetly go to the table of the second high bidder and say, you're in luck. The high bidder on that had made a mistake. They thought they were bidding on something else. You were the second high bidder. Would you like to take it at this price? And then offer it to the second high bidder. If you haven't been tracking the second high bidder, then it's just a matter of going back to the auctioneer and handing the auctioneer a note saying item number 3, did not sell, and a good auctioneer hopefully won't make a big deal out of it. Say, ladies and gentlemen, good news. Remember a couple items ago we had the trip, and through a mistake on our part, that trip didn't actually get sold. So we're going to start the bidding again. I believe I had the bidding at $3,500. So let's just start at $2,500. And we'll start the bidding at $2,500. So we dropped down a little bit, not all the way to the beginning. We never start all the way at the beginning, but dropped down a little bit to pull in the last 2 or 3 bidders and then resell it. And by the way, I've had to do that before. Sometimes we sell it a second time for more money we sold it for the first time because more people are paying attention.
Great advice. Thank you. Well, I think we're just about out of time. So I will say thank you very much, Jay, for sharing your time and expertise with all of us at MDA. Your insights and knowledge will most definitely help all of our staff as they're moving their gala events to be more successful in the future. We really do appreciate the time that you spent with us. We know you're busy.
It has been my pleasure.
Well, thank you. And again, for all of you to remember that this WebEx will be posted on the Distinguished Events Resource Center for all of you to watch a second time or to share with the other staff who weren't able to be on the call today. And then our next monthly WebEx is scheduled for Tuesday, August 4th. And the topic of that conversation will be the ultimate guest experience. So please mark your calendars. And we will say thank you to everybody and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.